President Trump's plan to take back the Panama Canal.
Panama's promise to us has been broken.
Whispers are spreading that the United States is on the brink of closing the Panama Canal, setting off a wave of worry and wild speculation. And now, tensions have escalated with President Donald Trump threatening to seize control and shut it down.
The Panama Canal, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
Picture the chaos, the massive disruption to global economies, and the ripple effect felt in every corner of the world. How close are we to this dramatic scene unfolding? And what could lead to such an extreme measure? In a shocking move, the U.S. might likely shut down the Panama Canal after this series of events. President Donald Trump threat. The battle for the Panama Canal is once again in the spotlight, as tensions rise with President Trump accusing Panama of unfair fees and troubling alliances. Despite his threats to take control of the canal, Panama refuses to back down. Trump has accused Panama of charging extremely high fees for using the canal, describing the fees as unreasonable and unfair to American commerce and naval operations. But the canal's operations vice president, who has worked there for over 40 years, says the rates are the same for everyone. The only exception? United States Navy ships get expedited transit, thanks to long-standing treaties. Trump went ahead to express that the canal was handed over to Panama, stating that if the United States had anticipated what was happening now, they would never have allowed it to occur. He declared that the canal should never fall into the wrong hands, yet claimed it was indeed falling into those hands. He emphasized that the canal was not given to Panama as a gesture of cooperation, but rather with conditions, and Panama was not treating the United States fairly. Trump insisted that if the moral and legal principles of the agreement were not being followed, the United States would demand that the Panama Canal be returned swiftly and completely. He made it clear that he would not tolerate the situation and urged Panama's officials to act accordingly. Trump saw the canal as a critical national asset that should never have been transferred to Panama in the first place. In response, Panama's President José Raúl Mulino declared that Panama would not yield to United States pressure. Trump's concerns went beyond the fees. In recent years, China has increased its presence in Panama through infrastructure investments linked to its Belt and Road Initiative. In 2018, Panama became the first Latin American country to join China's initiative. Chinese companies have since played an increasingly significant role in logistics and construction projects near the canal. This growing partnership raised Trump's suspicions and led him to call for the United States to regain control of the canal. But before we watch the ongoing feud between the United States and the Panama Canal, let's quickly go over how this all began. Big trouble: the race to control and shut down the Panama Canal. You've probably heard by now that the Panama Canal is in serious trouble. The headlines are hard to miss, and the videos speak for themselves. The canal is facing a crisis like never before. Its water levels are plummeting, ships are stuck waiting for days, and freight costs are soaring. The ripple effects are being felt all over global trade. While Panama scrambles to stay afloat, other countries are eyeing the $270 billion worth of cargo that passes through the canal each year. They're jumping into the race to build massive new projects that could take its place. But which one of these mega projects will rise to the challenge and claim the prize as the new trade route? The fight's not over yet. The Panama Canal connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, cutting weeks off shipping times. Before it existed, ships had to sail around South America or try to navigate the icy Northwest Passage. Building the canal wasn't easy, though. Nearly 6,000 workers lost their lives during construction. Yet, despite all the challenges, it opened in 1914 and quickly became one of the world's most vital trade routes. For decades, the Panama Canal was a symbol of American power, but for the people of Panama, it was a source of tension. The land around the canal, known as the Panama Canal Zone, was controlled by the United States, with American laws and a segregated society. In 1964, protests erupted as Panamanians demanded control over their land. After years of talks, in 1977, President Jimmy Carter signed the Torrijos-Carter Treaties, setting a date for Panama to take full control of the canal by December 31, 1999. The agreement also gave the United States the right to defend the canal's neutrality. To many Americans, it was a step toward easing tensions in the region. But the Panama Canal still plays a huge role today, handling about 14,000 ships a year. It moves nearly 6% of the world's trade, including cars, oil, and gas. The canal also brings in 20% of Panama's income, making it crucial to the country's economy. Fast forward to today, and the canal is facing a huge challenge. It's running out of water. Daily transits have dropped significantly, and some ships can't even carry their full load because of draft restrictions. Shipping costs have spiked, and some routes have seen price hikes of up to 400%. With climate change making droughts more frequent, experts are worried this could be a recurring issue. If the canal can't keep up, the impact on global trade could be massive. But that's not the only problem. The size of ships is growing, and the Panama Canal might not be able to handle them anymore. Despite all this, the Panama Canal isn't backing down. They're rolling out short-term fixes and long-term upgrades, including a $1.6 billion reservoir project to secure water for future transits. Will these efforts be enough to keep the canal on top, or will a new contender claim the crown? While the world debates control of the canal, something strange is happening just below the waterline, causing even more uncertainty about the future of this critical waterway. The secret fault beneath the Panama Canal. At first it seemed like nothing, just a few weird vibrations in the Panama Canal, but soon they were noticing strange whirlpools and weird noises, and that's when it drove public attention. It all happened like any other day. The Panama Canal Authority was keeping an eye on ships passing through when something strange happened. Vibrations were detected in one of the locks. Initially brushed off as a minor glitch, those vibrations turned out to be much more serious. Things started getting even worse when strange patterns began popping up in the canals, leaving both locals and scientists scratching their heads. Fishermen started noticing unexpected whirlpools showing up out of nowhere, messing with their routes and catches. Some even reported hearing deep, low sounds coming from the water, almost like vibrations that were off, and had this eerie rhythm to them. While fascinating, it raised some big questions. Could this be linked to the tectonic activity that was detected earlier, or was there something else going on beneath the surface? What they uncovered was far worse than anyone expected, and this is just the start of a series of shocking revelations that led the United States to intervene. To figure it out, geologists and marine engineers were called in. Early findings hinted that these strange occurrences might be connected to shifts in the newly discovered fault line under the canal. The thought was that this tectonic movement could be causing underwater pressure anomalies, which might explain the whirlpools and the weird sounds the fishermen were hearing. Even tiny, hard-to-detect seismic events could be making things worse, signaling more geological instability in the area. If tectonic shifts were messing with the canal's waters, it could create some serious problems. It might make repairs harder and put vessels at risk if underwater turbulence gets worse. Engineers started keeping a much closer eye on water flow and pressure, while seismic experts set up sensors to monitor the situation. As the odd occurrences continued, locals started to get nervous. Some thought the sounds and whirlpools were signs of something bigger, like earthquakes or underwater landslides, while others tied them to old local legends about hidden forces beneath the isthmus. For the scientists, it was a golden opportunity to learn more about the region's geology. If they confirmed a link to the fault line, it could help them understand it better and come up with strategies to deal with it. The more scientists looked into the strange events, the more complicated things got, leading to more shocking discoveries. The race to save the Panama Canal. With global trade at risk, cracks in the Panama Canal revealed ancient ruins adding new challenges to fixing the waterway. With billions of dollars worth of goods passing through the canal every year, even a brief closure could cripple supply chains. What seemed like a routine maintenance issue was quickly spiraling into a global crisis. The United States, with a major stake in the canal's stability, jumped in to help. Even though Panama has controlled the canal since 1999, the United States still holds strong interests. Specialized teams from the United States Army Corps of Engineers joined forces with Panamanian authorities to assess the damage and come up with emergency plans. Meanwhile, the media and public were buzzing with questions. Would ships have to reroute around the dangerous Cape Horn? Could the fragile global economy handle this kind of shock? And just when you thought things couldn't get any crazier, the investigation into the cracks and vibrations uncovered something truly mind-blowing. Using advanced sonar equipment, researchers discovered ancient structures buried beneath the canal. These weren't natural formations. These were remnants of a long-lost civilization. Archaeologists were stunned by the sophistication and complexity of these structures, which predated modern engineering by centuries. This discovery turned everything we thought we knew about the region's history on its head. Could the canal have been built on top of an ancient water management system? Were these ruins part of a lost infrastructure or something ceremonial? As scientists and historians scrambled to make sense of this discovery, the implications were staggering. High-resolution images revealed paved pathways, tools, and stones buried deep under layers of sediment. Some experts believed these were remnants of an advanced pre-Columbian civilization, while others suggested they could be tied to lost Central American cultures. Whatever the case, the discovery challenged old historical timelines and sparked heated debates. It also captured the imagination of the public, who wondered how such massive evidence had stayed hidden for so long. Now, the situation was more complicated than ever. On one hand, there was a desperate need to repair the canal and keep global trade flowing. On the other, there was a responsibility to preserve this groundbreaking piece of human history. Engineers and archaeologists had to work together, finding a balance between fixing the canal and carefully studying the ancient ruins beneath it. The Panama Canal became a crossroads of progress and history, drawing the world's attention and showing us the tough decisions we have to make when the past and present clash. But the cracks in the canal kept widening, and the warnings became more urgent. Even small earthquakes could make things worse, pushing it closer to a potential collapse. If the Panama Canal were to collapse, it would cause major disruptions to already fragile global supply chains, making the flow of goods around the world even more unstable. With that in mind, governments and corporations were forced into action. Emergency funds were poured in, and experts from all over the world were called in to find a solution. The repairs required cutting-edge tech and innovative techniques to reinforce the canal without disrupting operations. Meanwhile, archaeologists raced against the clock to document the ancient structures before they were lost forever. With the future of global commerce and a crucial piece of history hanging in the balance, the pressure was on. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, new problems began to surface, forcing everyone to face even tougher decisions. A closer look at the structural failures. With cracks forming in the Panama Canal's walls, engineers are racing against time to prevent a disaster that could paralyze global trade, while the United States calls for a coalition to protect this crucial passageway. The canal's walls were in serious trouble, posing a major threat to its integrity. Engineers warned that even small seismic shifts could make things worse, potentially leading to a catastrophic failure. This situation was compared to the 2017 Oroville Dam spillway collapse, where small cracks turned into a near disaster, displacing 180,000 people. Experts feared the same could happen to the canal, with fractures becoming a ticking time bomb under pressure from environmental stress or heavy ship traffic. If it were to fail, ships would have to reroute around South America's Cape Horn, adding weeks to transit times. This would further disrupt strained supply chains, particularly for essential goods like oil, grain, and electronics. Economists predicted years of trade slowdowns, with widespread economic fallout. In response, the Panama Canal Authority launched an emergency operation using advanced tech to assess and repair the damage. They scrambled to come up with contingency plans to reroute traffic and ease the strain on infrastructure. Time was of the essence, especially with the rainy season threatening to worsen the fractures. With recent technological advancements, they introduced AI-driven monitoring systems to the Panama Canal's operations. These systems are designed to predict stress points and catch early warning signs of potential failures. However, engineers have admitted that no technology can fully predict a tectonic shift. But just when experts thought the damage was contained, something even more unexpected emerged from the depths. Hidden treasures of the Panama Canal. What began as an infrastructure repair mission at the Panama Canal has evolved into a global crisis, as the discovery of rare minerals fuels intense competition among world powers. Investigations into the Panama Canal uncovered vast reserves of rare minerals, including lithium and cobalt, key materials in powering modern technologies. This discovery turned the already critical situation into a full-blown geopolitical chess game. As nations scrambled to stake their claim, the canal's strategic importance skyrocketed. The United States positioned its involvement as being focused on infrastructure repairs, but many critics saw deeper motives, securing access to these newly discovered resources. Panama found itself under intense pressure, forced to navigate the delicate balance between safeguarding its sovereignty over this newfound wealth and managing the growing interest from global powers. China, among other nations, quickly expressed its desire to get involved, further complicating the situation. At the same time, environmentalists raised alarms about the potential risks mining could pose to the canal's delicate ecosystem and its structural integrity. What began as an urgent repair mission now had the world's attention, evolving into a high-stakes geopolitical and economic crisis. The discovery placed the canal at the center of global resource competition, with countries scrambling for control. When global stakes meet instability. The potential economic fallout from a disruption to the Panama Canal could be catastrophic, with experts estimating that even a brief closure could cost the global economy billions of dollars. The potential economic fallout from a disrupted Panama Canal was staggering. Experts estimated that even a week of closure could cost the global economy billions, throwing a wrench into the flow of goods, raw materials, and energy resources. If it were closed, ships would have to take the long way around South America's Cape Horn, adding weeks to their journeys and drastically increasing fuel consumption and freight costs. People started drawing comparisons to the 2021 Ever Given incident in the Suez Canal, when a single grounded vessel blocked the waterway for 6 days, holding up billions of dollars in trade. That event showed just how fragile global supply chains are, and how a small disruption can send shockwaves through economies worldwide, causing shortages, delays, and price hikes. Analysts warned that a shutdown of the Panama Canal could have an even greater impact due to its critical role in connecting major markets across Asia, the Americas, and Europe. As the Panama Canal faced the risk of economic collapse, tensions in Panama itself began to mirror the uncertainty, as anti-American protests erupted ahead of crucial talks about the canal's future. The Panama Dispute begins. Protests break out in Panama. In Panama's capital, anti-American protests are popping up, reminding people of the country's historic fight for sovereignty over the Panama Canal. The city was covered in national flags ahead of United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio's visit, where he'll discuss President Donald Trump's threat to take back United States control of the canal. Even American tourists are confused by it all. The focus of the tension? 2 of the 5 ports that sit on either side of the canal, both run by a Hong Kong-based company, and a Chinese company currently building a new bridge over the waterway. President Trump believes these developments pose a threat to United States interests, fearing China could potentially use them to block United States commercial and military ships from passing through. However, Panama's president, José Raúl Mulino, is pushing back, describing Trump's claims as inventions and lies. He told the news that he had seen no evidence of any threat. Mulino stated that Secretary Rubio would need to provide proof that the Chinese were deploying drones or doing something that impacted the canal's security. He added that, until now, he couldn't speculate about such a thing, as there had been no issues. The Panama Canal operates 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and is managed entirely by Panama, a neutral country. This allows ships from around the world, including those from the United States and China, to pass through, often side by side. As Panama's streets buzzed with anti-American sentiment, Secretary of State Marco Rubio's visit took the tension up a notch. Rubio warns Panama. As tensions rise over China's growing presence around the Panama Canal, Marco Rubio's warning to Panama's president signals that the Trump administration is prepared to take drastic measures if needed. Marco Rubio, the United States Secretary of State, made a bold move during his first official foreign trip by warning Panama's president that the country needs to curb Chinese influence around the Panama Canal or risk facing action from the Trump administration. During the meeting, Rubio conveyed that Trump was not happy with the current situation at the canal, considering it unacceptable. If things didn't change immediately, the United States would have to take necessary measures to protect its interests, based on the United States-Panama Treaty. Trump has made it clear that he's not ruling out military force to take back control, arguing that China's growing presence around the canal, especially through investments in nearby ports, is a threat. While the tension with the United States continues to hang over Panama, there seems to be some relief in the air. According to Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera's Latin American editor, Panama has made some concessions, including agreeing not to renew its Belt and Road Initiative deal with China. President Mulino also reassured Rubio that the canal itself is free from Chinese interference, though ports on either side are controlled by Chinese companies. Panama is now conducting an audit of these operations. It looks like the two countries are also working on an agreement regarding undocumented migrants, with more details still being sorted out. As tensions rise over China's presence, Trump's accusations about Panama violating agreements add fuel to the fire. Trump accused Panama of breaking agreements. With a focus on China's growing influence in Panama, President Trump's call to take back the Panama Canal has opened a new chapter of international friction. During his inaugural speech, President Trump made strong accusations against Panama, claiming that they had broken their agreements with the United States. He stated that Panama's promise to the United States had been broken and argued that the spirit of the deal and the treaty were being violated. Trump further mentioned that American ships, including those of the United States Navy, were being overcharged and treated unfairly, while China was operating parts of the Panama Canal. He also reminded the audience that the canal had not been given to China, but to Panama, and asserted that the United States would take it back. Trump pointed to China's growing influence in the region, specifically through a major construction project, a $1.3 billion investment to build 2 bridges across the canal as part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. He believes this is all part of China's larger plan to expand its presence worldwide, and it's one of the Trump administration's biggest concerns. However, Panama's president, José Mulino, isn't backing down. He strongly defended Panama's control over the canal, stating that the Panama Canal was never a gift from the United States, but rather the result of a treaty in 1903. Since taking control in 1999, Panama has invested heavily in maintaining and expanding the canal, including major upgrades to handle larger ships. Panama's commitment to the canal means it has a lot at stake, and Molino pointed out that if the United States took it back, they'd be looking at a very different canal than the one handed over years ago. Interestingly, the site where Trump was speaking was built by the Chinese, who also marked 150 years of their presence in Panama with a monument. While no one is denying China's influence in the region, the question is how much control they really have over the canal. The Panama Canal's administration insists that it operates under strict neutrality, with all ships treated equally. But the concern is that any exceptions or changes could open a Pandora's box with unknown consequences. The more practical and efficient approach, they argue, is to maintain the current rules. Trump's remarks have sparked frustration in Panama, a longtime United States ally. Many feel his comments were disrespectful to their sovereignty and diplomatic relationship. If Trump's goal is to challenge China's influence in Panama, critics argue he's not going about it the right way, especially by attacking Panama itself. Trump wants the Panama Canal back. As tensions between the United States and China grow, President Donald Trump is stirring the pot once again, suggesting the United States should reclaim control of the Panama Canal. President Donald Trump wants the United States to take back control of the Panama Canal, something Washington handed over to Panama 25 years ago. Having already stirred tensions with China, Canada, and Mexico through tariff threats, Trump shifted his focus to the Panama Canal. In a recent post on X, his son Eric joked about adding the canal, Greenland, and Canada to an Amazon shopping cart, remarking that Panama was getting ripped off at the canal, much like other places. Trump responded by suggesting that the United States should simply take it back. Known for his spontaneous comments, this move appeared to be more of a strategic attempt to gauge Panama's response, while also sending a message to China. The canal is crucial for United States trade, especially when ships travel from Asia or the west coast of the United States to the east coast. Without it, the alternative route around the southern tip of South America is much longer and dangerous. But here's where the geopolitical tension kicks in. China has become the second largest user of the canal, raising questions about what might happen if tensions with China flare up. Panama's growing ties with China are making things even more complicated. In 2017, Panama switched its diplomatic allegiance from Taiwan to China. So, if a military conflict between the United States and China breaks out, could the United States rely on the Panama Canal? While Panama has signed agreements to guarantee fair access to all nations, Trump seems concerned that these agreements might not hold if tensions rise with China, especially since a Hong Kong-based company manages 2 ports along the canal. Trump has made it clear that the United States won't let the canal fall into the wrong hands, and in his view, the canal was always meant to be for Panama to manage, not China. The fees Panama charges, he argues, are unfair to the United States Navy and commerce. This statement coincided with the 35th anniversary of the United States invasion of Panama, which added even more fuel to the fire. Panama's president, José Molino, quickly fired back, asserting that the canal would always belong to Panama. He also defended the canal's fees, saying they are fair and transparently set. Countries like Mexico and others in Latin America have voiced their support for Panama, and they've rejected Trump's accusations about Chinese soldiers allegedly operating at the canal. Panama's president further clarified that there is no truth to that claim and emphasized the importance of Panama's relationship with China, especially when it comes to exports. As Trump escalates his calls for reclaiming the Panama Canal, his stance on international control is growing bolder, raising eyebrows with his drastic suggestions involving military force. Trump pushes military action. In recent news, President-elect Donald Trump has sparked major controversy by refusing to rule out using military force to take control of Greenland and the Panama Canal. He also floated the idea that Canada should become part of the United States. Trump doubled down on his push to take over Greenland and the Panama Canal, saying he wouldn't rule out using the military to make it happen. When asked if he could assure the world that he wouldn't use military or economic pressure to gain control, Trump responded that he couldn't provide that assurance, but emphasized the need for these areas for economic security. He also made it clear that the Panama Canal is crucial for the United States military, suggesting that drastic measures might be needed. He hinted that it might be necessary to take some action. Trump also suggested using economic force to pressure Canada into joining the United States, while announcing plans to soon rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. He remarked that it was a beautiful and appropriate name. In a wide-ranging press conference, Trump was asked about his vow to pardon those involved in the January 6th riots, including the police officers who were injured. He responded by focusing on the death of Ashley Babbitt, who was shot by Capitol Police during the riot, and noted that none of the rioters were armed with guns. However, he acknowledged that several weapons had been found among them. When asked if he would pardon those convicted of violent offenses, like assaulting police officers, Trump did not give a direct answer. As for Trump's demands to take control of Greenland, the Panama Canal, and even Canada, the Prime Minister of Denmark, who oversees Greenland, made it clear that Greenland was not for sale and would not be in the future. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also dismissed Trump's idea, stating that there was no chance whatsoever that Canada would ever become part of the United States. While Trump stirs up controversy, Panama's response is simple. The canal belongs to them, and they won't let it go. Not going to happen. In a recent conversation about President Trump's push to bring the Panama Canal back under United States control, the focus has shifted back to Panama. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News chief foreign affairs correspondent, was in Panama City, where she unpacked the situation. Panama, traditionally a close ally of the United States, has been working with America on migration agreements and other critical security issues. However, the recent remarks from President Trump about taking control of the canal sparked confusion, frustration, and defiance from Panama. At first, Panamanian officials thought Trump's comments were a joke. Then, as the rhetoric intensified, they grew more defensive. Just days ago, flags were flying all over Panama City in defiance of United States pressure. It was clear Panama was standing its ground. Mitchell spoke with a veteran of the Panama Canal, a former administrator who had hosted Vice President Pence back in 2019. He conveyed a message that had become a firm stance among Panamanians, emphasizing that the canal would not be returned to the United States. He suggested that instead of using force, both countries should work together to resolve any issues. The message from Panama was clear. They were proud of their canal, and it was staying in Panama. As the conversation around United States influence in the region continued to unfold, it became evident that any attempts to regain control of the canal would not be easily accepted. The people of Panama remained firm in their belief that their sovereignty over the canal was non-negotiable, and that the focus should be on fostering cooperation rather than conflict. Following that line of thought, President José Raúl Mulino stated to the press that he couldn't negotiate or open any talks about the Panama Canal, emphasizing that the matter was already settled and the canal belonged to Panama. He expressed that what he truly desired was to clear away the obstacles in the way, clean the slate, and have an open and honest conversation with the United States. He added that he wasn't seeking anything more than that. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.